Everyone. My name is Saul Behar, and I'm here to kick off today's hybrid event. While we have a small group with us here in the quorum space at 3675 Market, and all of us are maintaining appropriate social distancing, of course, many more of our guests are participating virtually. On behalf of the entire Science Center staff, welcome to Nucleus 2020, and thank you for joining us. Nucleus typically is a time when the Science Center reflects on our collective accomplishments and highlights from the past year. But this year has been extremely challenging, to say the least. From an international pandemic to a continued upward battle towards equality for all, it's difficult to find much to celebrate these days. So where do we go from here? As I've reflected on this question personally, I'm encouraged by the work our team and our partners are doing every day to prepare for a brighter tomorrow. From the continued investment in the startup community that represents tomorrow's economy, to the launch of a free STEM workforce development program in preparation for thousands of new jobs in the region's life sciences sector, and the continued convening of an inclusive community that defies geographic limitations, the Science Center continues to be at the nucleus of an innovative, collaborative, and equitable future. Our 2020 honorees are also looking ahead. Each of them visionaries in their own right, our awardees are paving the way for a brighter tomorrow and represent an ecosystem that asks questions, pushes boundaries, and challenges our normal. Their achievements are now more timely than ever, and we are honored to spotlight their work in commercialization, convening, and cultivation. Finally, we are thrilled for you to meet our newest visionary, Tiffany Wilson, the Science Center's next president and CEO, who will take the helm on October 1st. We're looking forward to introducing her to all of you in person soon. Nucleus 2020 would, of course, not be possible without our incredible sponsors. In particular, we would like to acknowledge CSL Behring as presenting sponsor, New Spring as sponsor of the Commercialization Award, PFM and Tri-State as co-sponsors of the Convener Award, Wexford Science and Technology and Ventas as co-sponsors of the Cultivator Award, and last but not least, WHYY as this year's media sponsor. We'd also like to acknowledge the wonderful support from the many gold sponsors and silver sponsors. Thank you very much to all of you. On behalf of the Science Center team, many, many thanks to all of you who have supported this event and who support us throughout the year. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Bill Mezzanotte, Executive Vice President, Head of R&D, and Chief Medical Officer at CSL Behring. As presenting sponsor of Nucleus and a valued corporate partner of the Science Center, CSL Behring has been an essential supporter, helping to underwrite and build our region's innovation ecosystem. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bill.
Thank you, Saul, and thank you to everyone joining, both at the Science Center and virtually. Before I go further, I want to also congratulate and extend a warm welcome to the Science Center's new president and CEO, Tiffany Wilson. Tiffany's experience and enthusiasm will be invaluable to the Science Center as we catalyze local partnerships that turn great ideas into meaningful medicines. Each fall, the Nucleus Awards brings together the region's leaders and groundbreakers, and all while supporting Philadelphia's future as a hub of scientific collaboration and discovery. Funds raised through Nucleus help sustain Science Center's programs, which support the growth of businesses, create spaces and programs for convening, and help develop the next generation of innovators through STEM education. The positive impact the Science Center has on communities in the region and the entrepreneurial ecosystem it has created are two of the many reasons I was excited to join the board of directors earlier this year. And these are also two of the reasons why I'm here tonight on behalf of CSL Behring, the presenting sponsor of this year's Nucleus Awards. We are one of the world's leading biotechnology companies, and our US headquarters are only a short drive away in King of Prussia, a place that I'm sure Tiffany will learn about in short order. And remember, Tiffany, it's not just a great shopping mall at King of Prussia, we also happen to have great science. Our work with the Science Center continues to grow. We partner to fund promising research through CSL Behring's Research Acceleration Initiative, which offers grants to researchers around the world working on our scientific areas of interest. And we recently opened an R&D laboratory at the Science Center campus to take advantage of the amazing environment there. In our quest to uncover disruptive scientific methods that could help ensure patients with rare or serious diseases have the medicines they need in the future, we opened a lab here to be even closer to the world-class research institutions and universities that call their home in this area. A quick note, while our lab was being built, the team borrowed space from Integral Molecular. So Ben, not only are congratulations in order, but a thanks from CSL. It's inspiring to celebrate stories of hope tonight, given the challenges in front of us. From the COVID-19 pandemic to racial injustice, we need more people and more partnerships to catalyze positive change. That's why the Science Center's work is so important. For almost 60 years, the Science Center has worked in the intersection of scientific advancement and economic development. As a board member, I know firsthand that the organization has remained steadfast in that mission. The visionaries we're honoring tonight, Ben, Aurora, and Sylvester, embody what the Science Center is striving for. Their work is filled with innovation, collaboration, and a relentless focus on improving people's lives. And while we are proud that these honorees are part of our local community, we are equally hopeful that their impact will travel well beyond our borders. At CSL Behring, our commitment to innovation and collaboration has guided us for more than a century. These values have been fundamental to our success, helping us to save lives, protect the health of people, and earn our reputation as a trusted and reliable employer and a biotechnology leader around the world. Our 27,000 employees come to work every day knowing that patients' lives depend on us. And that has never been more true than in the last 7 months. So on behalf of CSL Behring and the Science Center Board of Directors, thank you for joining us today in the spirit of innovation and collaboration, and congratulations to this year's honorees. I hope that tonight's talks remind us all that despite today's current challenges, we remain on a path to create a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And thanks again to CSL Behring for your wonderful support. This night would also not be possible without the partnership of WHYY, tonight's media sponsor. We are very fortunate to have an outstanding host this year, Tracey, award-winning journalist and contributor at WHYY. With more than 25 years of major market television and radio experience, Tracey has anchored numerous special projects for WHYY Philadelphia, and also serves as a regular guest host of WHYY FM's Radio Times with Marty Moss-Coane. In addition, Tracey serves as moderator for the Philadelphia Speakers Series, where she has shared the stage with the likes of NBC's Tom Brokaw, former British Prime Minister David Cameron, political strategist Karl Rove, and acclaimed filmmaker Ken Burns. Tracey, welcome to Nucleus 2020.
Well, thank you so much, Saul. It is a delight to be here with all of you tonight. And, you know, the Science Center's mission, along with the ecosystem that it has helped to build, I think is more important now probably than it's ever been as we look at, you know, the life science industry and STEM equity and how they are playing a critical role in our collective success. So I am very excited to meet our honorees, to share their inspiring stories with all of you, and to get to know them a little bit better.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Tonight, agreed. Tonight's honorees are so deserving, and we thank you in advance for helping all of us really get to know them and learn about their work.
Sure.
Before we get started with tonight's program, I want to turn the tables and ask you a few questions.
Oh boy.
We recently spoke with our honorees for a blog post and asked them a few questions, and we'd love to hear your responses as well. Are you ready?
Okay.
Question number one, what is your superpower?
I would say my superpower is empathy. I think not just being able to sense someone else's emotions, but being able to kind of step into their shoes and feel that emotion, which, you know, can be a double-edged sword sometimes, but it certainly, I think, has helped me to make great connections with people.
Sounds great. And question number two, what is your favorite thing about Philadelphia?
Oh my. I've been here a long time. I have a lot of things, but I would say Philadelphia is one-stop shopping. If you've been here for any length of time, you know that we have arts and culture, we've got sports teams, we've got lots of history, we've got scientific institutions, great hospitals and institutions of higher learning. We've got proximity to other large cities. We're very affordable as a big city to live in. Very importantly, we have D'Alessandro's cheesesteaks. And I would say, I'm a little bit biased here, of course, but WHYY is also one of my favorite things because of the service that it provides to the community.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I think I'm ready to become a contributor for WHYY too.
Hey, well, welcome on board. We'll be glad to have you. Let's put it that way. Well, now that we've had an opportunity to get to know each other just a little bit, what do you say we begin to meet our wonderful honorees? Our first award this evening is the 2020 Commercialization Award, and that is sponsored by NewSpring.
Hi, hello everybody. I'm Mike DiPiano, and I'm a managing general partner, founder of NewSpring Capital, but most importantly, I have the opportunity to be the chair of the Science Center board. It's a great opportunity tonight to honor a number of people, and I have the wonderful situation to be able to give the first award, the 2020 Commercialization Award. But before we get started, I also want to welcome Tiffany Wilson to the Science Center. Looking forward to working with you, Tiffany. And I also want to do a shout out to Steve Zarilli, our former CEO, who is staying on the board and has offered to help Tiffany as she joins Philadelphia and meets the many people that Steve knows and Tiffany will get to know. So at NewSpring Capital, we've had a 20-year history of investing in companies that help transform the local community and sometimes around the world. Those are both life sciences companies, healthcare companies, and technology businesses. Almost always there's promising technologies that find a way to get to the marketplace. There's individuals that have passion and just tremendous drive to see their thoughts and their technologies see the marketplace. But most importantly, getting there, seeing that vision happen requires significant execution. We have a phrase at NewSpring that a vision, a strategy is really not much more than a mirage if one doesn't execute brilliantly. Today's honoree, Benjamin Doranz, who's the leader of Integral Molecular and is the president CEO of that company, has constantly beat the odds since that company was founded in 2001. Now, Dr. Doranz is not alone. When he founded Integral Molecular, he did so with Sharon Willis and Joe Rucker, both of whom are here tonight to cheer Benjamin on. From that start, which came from the University of Pennsylvania using virus-based technologies, the company was born. Benjamin has led all aspects of the company's growth since its inception, bringing 5 different technologies from research to market. And he's cultivated a company that not only has a great culture, but is also highly profitable, and all the while being engaged in the local community. That commitment to the community and the impact prompted the company to rapidly switch gears in 2020 with the advent of the pandemic. They piloted research and development programs in 2020 to combat COVID, and with the support of the National Institute of Health and a team of very talented scientists, Integral Molecular quickly and rapidly adapted its platform technologies to launch a suite of research solutions to accelerate the development of SARS-CoV-2 therapeutics. The company has similarly responded to other emerging pandemics such as Ebola and Zika. Those viruses supporting vaccine and therapeutic discovery efforts throughout industry and academia is what Integral Molecular focused to do. Since 2009, the company has received $25 million from the NIH to study viral immune responses, a testament to the company's reputation as an innovative leader in virology. Please join me in congratulating Benjamin Doranz and Integral Molecular with the 2020 Nucleus Commercialization Award.
Well, then, congratulations to you and to your team at Integral Molecular. Really thrilled to have you here tonight.
Oh, thank you.
We just heard about how back in March you pivoted from what you were working on to really focus in on COVID. Can you explain to those of us who are not scientists exactly what your focus is in that fight, and what makes Integral Molecular uniquely qualified to be in that battle?
Sure. So, before I get started, I just want to say thank you to everyone. CSL, NewSpring, Saul, Kurt Hess, welcome Tiffany. to the Science Center in general, Lorraine, Megan, everyone who's been behind us for the last 20 years. We wouldn't be here without the support of the Science Center and everyone around us, that community. And thanks to Joe and Sharon, my co-founders as well, because they make things happen. I help them and they help everyone else, and it all works as a community. So when COVID started in March, we of course pivoted to COVID-19, but for us, we've been working on viruses for 20 years. We were founded based on virus technologies. So the fight against COVID was nothing completely new for us. It was a pivot to another virus that we can fight, and certainly a needed one. What I'm most proud of as we've launched all of our technologies against the virus is that we've been able to support over 100 other companies creating vaccines and therapeutics and diagnostics. The products and services that we provide are technologies usually behind the scenes. We don't get all the headlines, and that's okay, because what we're doing is enabling everyone else to fight COVID. But specifically the technologies that we do provide enable people to understand the immune response against the virus. When you get tested or when you get a vaccine in a few months, hopefully, some point, you want to know if you have antibodies that kill the virus. And that's the kind of technologies that we provide to other companies.
Well, we also heard that this is not the first time that you have pivoted in this way, that you've worked on Zika, you've worked on Ebola and others. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what these emerging epidemics have taught you as a scientist and as a leader.
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, we've been working on these things for 20 years, and I don't want to sound paranoid, but these viruses are out there and they want to kill us. So we've got to respond. We've got to be there. We go where we're needed. And it's been, you know, in the last 10 years, Zika, chikungunya, Ebola, and now SARS. And I think what it's taught me is that as scientists, as leaders in the community, we have to be prepared. They're out there. And we have to respond and be ready to respond, and not just respond in retrospect, but prevent the next pandemic. And those are the kinds of things that we're doing. Ourselves, as well as many other scientists, medical professionals, public health officials, we're all trying to prevent these pandemics rather than simply respond to them.
So we'll be hearing from our additional honorees in just a few minutes about their work combating racial inequality. And while that may not seem as directly related to what you're doing at Integral in terms of the epidemic, we certainly know that race has played a critical role, right, in the epidemic and certainly in public health. We've seen the different outcomes, for instance. Can you talk about how you address that at Integral?
Yeah, the racial disparity in COVID and across the nation, frankly, even before COVID, really struck a chord with our company personally. There's many people within the company who've taken racial inequality and the voice that it now has very personally, and they should. This is the time when we should all stand up, we should all lead, and make sure that voice turns into action. And I'm really proud of my company because we're focused on COVID. We're a biotechnology company. We fight the virus. But of course, as you mentioned, the virus is disproportionately affecting minorities and Black communities, both in health and financially. So as a company that's being funded to fight the virus, it's our responsibility, in my opinion, and the opinion of every employee in the company, it's our responsibility, our duty to fight racial inequality as well. And I'm really proud because that mission has turned into action items. We've had many, many discussions, and those discussions are turning into a list of action items, things that we can do personally and as a company and as a community to fight racial discrimination. And things like our hiring practices and education and philanthropy and volunteerism and mentoring. Each of these things is being turned into, we have about 20 things on our list of things that we want to do to combat racism.
Well, we've got less than a minute left. I want to squeeze in two last questions. One is that I was interested to hear that your organization partners with the Science Center on a bioart residency that embeds artists in the lab to work alongside the scientists. So can you just tell us what was the rationale for that, and how would you like to see that maybe expanded in the coming years?
Yeah, and, you know, again, thanks to Angela McQuillan and David Clayton for helping work with us on that. We've been doing that for many years, and that's actually related to COVID and why we're here today, that community, because the whole purpose of the BioArt residency is to communicate science and to educate everyone about what science is. And you can't always do that through science. You can't always throw facts and figures and statistics and charts and graphs. People's eyes glaze over. So you have to communicate in a different way, in an emotional way, something that appeals and resonates with people. And sometimes that's art. One way to do that is art. And so when we talk about vaccines, that they're real, that climate change is real, you can't just throw these papers at people and expect them to understand them. You have to communicate in a different way, and we've tried to do that through art.
Yeah. Well, Ben, congratulations to you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and sharing the work that you're doing at Integral. We wish you all the best with all of the work that you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, our next honoree is being recognized for her work in removing barriers to connect diverse people and ideas to advance civic interests and to improve lives. The 2020 Convener Award is co-sponsored by PFM and Tri-State Capital.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kerry Benson, Managing Director and Chief Information Officer at PFM, as well as a proud Science Center board member. I'm joined this evening by Joe Finley, Regional President of Tri-State, and we believe that the best ideas don't happen in a vacuum, but through the intersection of diverse ideas and accessible resources. Through introductions, meetings, and interactions in common spaces, all of us exchange ideas, solve problems, and align our needs and interests in ways that help spark the ideas that in turn lead to businesses and products that improve our collective quality of life. And conveners are the people who work tirelessly to bring us together in that spirit of partnership and collaboration. Aurora Archer is the ideal example of what is possible when we use empathy and diversity as an asset, challenging our way of thinking and inspiring a community to change together. And that is why we are proud to sponsor the Nucleus 2020 Convener Award.
Aurora Archer is an award-winning digital marketing executive who has spent the last 25 years delivering business impact across the technology and healthcare industries. Aurora co-founded the Bellatrix Group in 2018, bringing her diverse skill sets and passion to enable health and wellness clients create meaningful disruption by bringing a human-centered approach, creating engaging experiences that truly serve the audience while delivering bold commercial growth. Most recently, Aurora is the founder and co-host of the Opt-In podcast, focusing her talent of engagement and authentic storytelling to unite a diverse audience around difficult and honest conversations on our own racial biases. The Opt-In invites its audience to an intimate, ongoing conversation between a woman of color and a white woman who are unpeeling their collective conditioning, exploring ongoing re-education, and stumbling on their traumas and blind spots, all while making more space for love, forgiveness, freedom, and truth. Please join me in congratulating Aurora Archer with the 2020 Nucleus Convener Award.
Aurora, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I am a listener of the Opt-In.
Oh,
so,
thank you.
Yes,
Thank
so
you so
we're
much.
Delighted that you're here. You have talked about taking a human-centered approach and how that's been a big part of your success as a marketing executive. Can you talk about what that looks like and why that's been so important to your success?
Yes, but before I do that, I would be remiss if I did not thank my entire friends and family here at the Science Center, Tracey, Megan, Kristen, everyone has been just, and I call them family because that's what they have been to me and to us as a company. So thank you so much for this award. Human-centered for us has really been the foundation of how we approach our marketing work at the Bellatrix Group. It really sits at the core of how we work with clients, whether they're trying to design an innovation or launch a new product. And it comes down to leveraging one of the things that you talked about, Tracey, as your superpower, which is empathy. It's really about listening. It's really about not only taking our intellectual gifts, but our heart-centered capabilities and really embodying that with empathy and really understanding who in that moment are we being entrusted to serve. And you know, I think a lot of times it's finding that balance, particularly with corporate executives and corporate P&Ls and bottom line objectives. There's sort of an intention or an objective that the executive team may have, but it's really about creating that same obligation and responsibility in understanding the needs and creating services, products, and offerings that see the totality of that human that we have been truly entrusted and have been given the privilege to serve with a new product, service, or offering.
I want to talk about the opt-in
Yes.
for a moment, because I don't have to tell you that 2020
Yes.
has been a decade, and it has really kicked off a national conversation
Yes.
on race. Obviously, you and Kelly had started the podcast prior to this year,
We did.
but tell us a little bit about what prompted you to start the podcast, and then maybe how the events of 2020 are influencing the conversations you're having.
Sure. It really started from a place of recognizing that a lot of my loving, well-meaning, phenomenal white friends were still, in my opinion, apathetic, sitting from a place of thinking of themselves as great liberal people, but I think very similar, nothing was actually changing. I didn't see their actions changing from a personal perspective, and certainly as someone who traversed the walls of corporate America as a woman of color for over 25 years, it wasn't changing there either. And I took a book called White Fragility, and I bought 30 copies of the book and handed it off to some of my very beautiful, wonderful white friends, girlfriends, and some of my work colleagues that I felt could receive the book with the intention with which I was giving it, which is, I'm giving you this book from a place of love and a place of no shame and judgment. And I'm asking you to read it because I need you to do better. I need you to do better as my white friend, and I need you to do better as a human being. And Kelly was a friend that dove knee deep, actually deeper than knee deep, into that conversation with me.
Wow. Want to talk about a couple of things in the last couple of minutes that we have. This award acknowledges your work in bridging diverse people and assets, as we have talked about. Can you talk a little bit about who it is, maybe in your professional and or personal life, who made those connections for you?
For me, it really was my parents. My mother is a Mexican immigrant. My father is an African-American cowboy from Cuero, Texas. My parents came together at a time that in this country, their union was illegal, and there were many laws against their union. My parents are not married by the church because the priest blatantly said to my mother, "Are you sure you want to marry a Black man?" And so I think my parents always set an example, not only by the values that they instilled in myself and my sister, but how they modeled that in the community and always welcoming everyone to our table. Didn't matter socioeconomic class, did not matter what color your skin was, religion, etc. Everyone was invited to that table. And there's an incredible gift my father gave me as a kid. There's a tape, you know how we all have those tapes that our parents repeat to us all the time. My dad was, love them, baby, even when they don't know how to love themselves. And I didn't really understand the profoundness of that statement until I was about in my 20s. But I heard it since the time I was like a toddler.
Yeah, and it clicked.
And it clicked.
Much later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In a recent Science Center blog post, you talked about the word inclusion and how you kind of struggle with its place in conversations around diversity. What did you mean by that?
So I think that there's language that has brought us to this moment in time in our humanity. I am grateful for all the work that has gotten us to this point. But inclusivity, if we really unpack that word, still places the choice of someone else having power to include me. And I think we need to examine that, because I think that where we are hoping to reimagine and go is a place where all are welcome. We are simply open. No one's including someone or not.
So it's not that someone else is making that decision to include.
And this is what we're unpacking as a society where there is a value, a hierarchy of value of human beings. And until we get to a place where we rebalance that into a mutuality where all are valued the same, no one needs to be included, because we all are.
Yeah. So in our last 30 seconds,
Yes.
Aurora, if you had a call to action for our audience, what would it be?
Opt in. Opt into your humanity. Opt in into those uncomfortable edges of conversation, of change, and opt in to reimagine our world. We're not going back to anything. It's not about reconciling. We were never together, truly. It is about us reimagining where we're going together.
Yeah.
So opting into that.
Aurora Archer is our winner. Congratulations
Thank
on your award. And we are certainly looking forward to the rest of season 3 of the Opt-in and many seasons to come. Our next honoree is being recognized for his demonstrated leadership and commitment in building a diverse and equitable workforce that represents our community at large. The 2020 Cultivator Award is co-sponsored by Wexford Science and Technology and Ventus.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Grady, Senior Vice President, Northeast Regional Executive for Wexford Science and Technology. I'm happy to be here this afternoon representing Wexford and Ventus as co-sponsors of this year's Cultivator Award. Before I start, I do want to add my welcome to Tiffany. We look forward to welcoming you to Philadelphia. We look forward to welcoming you to Market Street and 3675. Before Bill drags her out to King of Prussia, we got a lot of work to do on Market Street, so we'll take advantage of that opportunity when we see you in a few weeks. Wexford and Ventus are proud to be long-term partners with the Science Center, not only developing the buildings and the spaces that support innovation here in U City Square, but also investing in and building the multifaceted community that's necessary to leverage that physical environment and produce transformational growth. As partners, Wexford, Ventus, and the Science Center are all committed to creating a knowledge community here in Philadelphia, built on a foundation of discovery, innovation, entrepreneurial activity, and inclusion. Those are the pipeline to breakthroughs in science and technology that benefit society broadly, but they also drive substantial economic growth, new and diverse jobs, and real community transformation. But building these communities requires far more than compelling real estate. It demands the resources, support, and opportunities to cultivate a community capacity that builds a diverse workforce and leads to social and economic inclusion. We know this now more than ever during this time in our country's history and in our current events. And that is why we are especially proud to sponsor this year's 2020 Cultivator Award. Sylvester Mobley is the founder and CEO of Coded by Kids, a youth tech education nonprofit that provides young people between the ages of 8 to 18 from underrepresented groups with software development, digital design, computer science, and tech startup-focused entrepreneurship skills as a means to fight social and economic inequality. Sylvester created Coded by Kids because of his own frustration with the lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion that he saw in the tech industry every day. In his own experience, there weren't many people of color in the industry, and the same was true in the data he reviewed from companies like Google, Microsoft, and Facebook. Under his leadership, Coded by Kids has grown from serving fewer than 15 children in one Philadelphia recreation center to more than 500 students per week in schools and community centers across 3 states. Through his work, Sylvester works to ensure that every child has the skills, the support, the networks, and the resources to be the next generation of tech and innovation leaders we all want them to be. Please join me in congratulating Sylvester Mobley and Coded by Kids with the 2020 Nucleus Cultivator Award.
Well, Sylvester, congratulations to you and to the entire Coded by Kids team.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you are the winner of the Cultivator Award. Tell us what cultivation means to you.
So first, I just want to start by thanking the Coded by Kids team. I mean, everything we do is as a result of the hard work, the commitment that they have. I also want to thank the Science Center. I got Lorraine. I love Lorraine. Lorraine has been by our side, been by my side. Without question, Tracey saw, the Science Center team has always been there, been very supportive of us, even before our offices were here. So I really appreciate their team. For me, cultivation is about believing in the true potential of people. One of the reasons I feel like we're at the point in time that we're at is because we haven't believed in more from, Black and brown people. And if you're truly going to cultivate people, you have to believe in more. You have to believe in what their true potential is. And, when I think about cultivation, that's all we're really doing. We're believing in the true potential of our young people, and then they do the rest of the work.
Yeah, having a higher set of expectations.
Yeah, exactly.
Like. Yeah.
Exactly.
Philadelphia, as you know, is among the poorest big cities in America. And of course, that poverty tends to fall along racial lines. You have talked in the past about how Coded by Kids is not just about building a talent pipeline, but about counteracting these long, unaddressed, systemic racial equality issues. Can you talk about how your program addresses that long-term vision, and what can we do better in our region to support that?
So there's 2 things. One, and this goes back to what I was just saying about believing in more. If you set the bar, which often we set the bar at jobs, and when we talk about Black kids, Black people, the measure of success is, did they get a job? To me, that's a very low measure of success. The other reality we face is usually wherever you set the bar, not everyone is going to reach that, and some people will fall somewhere in the middle. So if you set the bar at jobs, what happens to all the people who don't reach that because you've set the bar so low? So for us, it's how do you set the bar as high as possible? If you set the bar at building people who are truly in leadership positions, for us, our goal isn't employment for our young people. Our goal is they should be CEOs and CTOs of tech and innovation-driven companies. If we set the bar there, if they don't make it all the way there, they become the VP of engineering, they become the director of, to me, that's still—
Not so bad.
Right, that's still success. The second part is we go against conventional wisdom. The conventional wisdom is if you want to solve poverty, you focus on people who are in poverty. We focus on underrepresentation, which isn't the same thing as focusing on people who are in poverty. The reason we do that is when you just focus on people who are in poverty, you miss the role that race plays in someone's outcomes. Some people may be familiar with the one data point that 41% of Black males who grew up rich will end up either lower middle class or poor. That's not because they grew up poor, that's because of the role that race plays. When you only focus on people who are poor, you miss the people who aren't poor, who are being pushed down because of the role of race. So you basically create an unsolvable problem. Like, in a way, you're manufacturing poverty only by focusing on people in poverty. So we say, well, our focus is underrepresentation. so that we can account for that, so that we can actually address, one, giving people who are lower income an ability to move up, but also ensuring that people who aren't lower income, people who aren't in poverty, are able to stay where they are.
You said in a Science Center blog post not long ago that Philly has the potential to get it right where other cities have gotten it wrong. What did you mean by that?
So I've been fortunate enough to have been able to travel to other cities that have, either already well-established tech and innovation ecosystems or growing tech and innovation ecosystems. And the inequity is frankly horrifying that you can see in those cities. And it's interesting because when you have conversations with people in those ecosystems, the level of inequity often doesn't register. What they see is the economic growth, and they're happy with the economic growth. What gets missed is all the people being left behind. Philly is at a point where we have this growing, this very vibrant, tech and innovation ecosystem, and we're not far enough down the road where we can't do the work to make sure it's equitable. We haven't moved so far to where all is lost. Like, honestly, if you go out to cities like the Bay Area, it's hard to say to me that you can unwind what's happened. Philly hasn't gone that far yet. So I think we have the opportunity now to make the tough decisions to build the city that we truly deserve and believe in.
Yeah. What keeps you motivated, Sylvester? When you think about addressing systemic racism and what a long and difficult process that is, what keeps you motivated?
That's a tough question. It's a tough question because doing this work, one of the most surprising things I've found is how many people, frankly, don't care about the outcomes of Black children. And it's tough to go into meetings and you can just see the lack of concern. The one thing I can always hold on to is seeing what our kids are capable of. I see our kids do amazing things. I see two of our kids who are now in college, who are starting a startup together, and we're having conversations about raising venture capital and how to build a company. Being able to see what our kids are able to do, and we're fortunate because our kids stay with us over the course of multiple years, so we have the privilege of watching young people grow up. I mean, to me, that is the most amazing, part about what we do.
Yeah, it's why you do what you do. Yeah. So if you had a call to action for our audience, what would it be?
Write checks. And, I often talk to people who will say, I want to volunteer, I don't want to write a check, or I'll talk to people in companies that will say like, yeah, we really support what you're doing, we want to get involved, but we don't really want to write a check. We're here where we are because of intentional disinvestment. Racial inequity happened because people intentionally disinvested in racial minorities. You can't solve disinvestment with more disinvestment. If you truly want to engage and solve the problem, then you have to invest in solutions that solve the problem. So, I say to people, write checks. If you really believe in ending racial inequity, if you really believe in fighting it, then, well, you have to invest in it because that's the only way it changes.
Yeah, got to put some skin in the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Sylvester, congratulations to you. Congratulations to the Coded by Kids team. And we're excited to see what's going to happen over the next several years.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I really appreciate it.
So before we end our evening, we've got another very special guest. As many of you know, we've been mentioning this throughout our time together. Tiffany Wilson will be joining the Science Center next month as the new president and CEO, but we have the great opportunity to speak with her for just a few minutes today. Tiffany brings to the Science Center 2 decades of leadership in transitioning new medical technologies from benchtop to bedside, building partnerships across academia, industry, and economic development. She most recently served as the CEO of the Global Center for Medical Innovation, that's in Atlanta. It is a nonprofit dedicated to supporting the development and commercialization of innovative medical products. Tiffany served on the National Advisory Council on Innovation and Entrepreneurship of the U.S. Department of Commerce She was recognized by Inc. magazine as one of the 17 inspiring women to watch in 2017 and one of Becker Hospital Review's 110 women in medtech to know in 2017. So we are absolutely excited and delighted to welcome Tiffany to Nucleus 2020. And I'm sure we'll be seeing her. There she is.
Yep.
I think there she is. There we go. Tiffany, welcome and congratulations on your new position.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tracy, and congratulations to all the awardees. Really inspiring stories.
They are indeed. Well, Tiffany, tell us, what is it that drew you to the Science Center in Greater Philadelphia?
So, you know, I learned about the Science Center in 2014, and I was invited to join the steering committee of at that point, the newly formed Digital Health Accelerator, the DHA. And then later that year, I had the privilege of meeting Steve Tang during our advisory work on NACI at Department of Commerce. And honestly, I was just really inspired by the history of the Science Center and all the activities going on in Greater Philadelphia. You know, it's funny, after I first connected with the Science Center and I went to link in with some folks, I realized I just didn't have, there wasn't a whole lot of overlap between the Southeast and the Greater Philadelphia region, but there were so many connections in Boston and San Francisco and New York. So I've just remained kind of admiring the work that the Science Center has done, and I'm just absolutely thrilled to come on board at this time.
I want to talk to you a little bit about startups. In your experience, what would you say are the biggest barriers to startup success and to commercialization?
So when I think about, you know, healthcare and life sciences and technology startups, you know, the consistent themes that I see companies continuing to miss the mark is really not understanding the customer. And, you know, and not understanding the go-to-market strategy. So that's the key one. A lot of times you see clinicians and technologists, engineers inventing amazing technologies where there's really not a product market fit. And so that, coupled with a lack of, quite candidly, a lack of coachability for first-time founders or a management team, and a combination of those two really resulting in a lack of funding, whether, you know, angel investment or institutional money, because the capital for these technologies, these startups, is already tight, right? And so really, and particularly when you're dealing with regulated industries, just navigating that that pathway can be tricky.
So, as you know, you've been listening in and we've been talking quite a bit about diversity and equality this evening. And I'm wondering how you're thinking about that as you're preparing to come to Philadelphia. How will the Science Center, under your leadership, further a diverse STEM sector here in Philadelphia?
Yeah, so this is something I'm really passionate about. And, you know, it is worth mentioning, I think, that, you know, I started my career in the greater Washington, D.C. area. I've been in Atlanta, Georgia for the last 14 years, where we've been experiencing our own challenges and initiatives around diversity and equity. And I grew up in Mississippi. And so I've got a real different lens of how all these things are intersecting and the different dialogues going on in the different communities. But about 6 years ago, I founded MedTech Women, the Life Science Southeast, which is formerly the Southeastern Medical Device Association. And it wasn't only to provide a network for women in our industry in the region, but I was seeing so many female clinicians and academic engineers inventing things, but I wasn't seeing them at the table. And so it's really been rewarding to see that program grow. And so when I kind of take those different lenses and look at the Science Center, you know, diversion and equity is already important to the Science Center. And as it's been so eloquently said tonight by our awardees, you know, we know that diverse companies and a diverse workforce is really essential to performance and impact in our region. And so now, you know, I really am looking at this as we have an opportunity to continue to expand our leadership efforts in the community in these initiatives, I'm committed to really engaging and working closely with the board of directors at the Science Center, the senior leadership team and our staff there, as well as the community, which I think has really been highlighted tonight, the importance of everybody getting involved to address these issues in a meaningful way.
Tiffany, I understand that you started out in the financial sector, and I'm curious how you got from there to medical technology.
Yeah, so it was interesting. So I never thought about the med tech sector. I graduated from Georgetown MBA program in 2001. And so if you recall, that was right after the dot-com bubble had burst. It was mid-Enron and pre-9/11. So not really a great time starting a new job with a technology company in Northern Virginia. But I had realized in business school, I really liked the analyst work and the structure of that, but I really was looking for an opportunity to shift from an advisory capacity to using that skill within a company as part of a team versus consulting for one. And I had been working with a small investment bank there in DC and had the serendipitous opportunity to be involved in the Series A raise of a tissue engineering startup out of Boston. And once we closed the Series A, I was able to join the management team to lead corporate finance and strategy. And I just completely fell in love with the sector. And I remember the day like it was yesterday. I was in an operating room. We were doing some preclinical work in a lab at Purdue very early in the process. And I thought I had died and gone to heaven. It was the coolest thing ever to be able to sitting there working with the surgeons and the biomedical engineers and taking that information and translating that to the investors. So it's just a really nice intersection of activities, and one that I think is a key driver for all of us in the sector is that we get to impact society in a positive way. We get to impact patients' lives.
So you mentioned just a moment ago that you earned your MBA in a really rough year for America. And of course, all of us are just marveling at what a difficult year 2020 has been for everyone. I'm curious what you have learned personally and professionally during this very challenging year of 2020.
It has been a challenging year. And, early in this COVID process in March, it really dawned on me that what we had gone through, our class of graduating, and we actually organized a Zoom presentation for the current graduates from the Georgetown McDonough School of Business to share our insights and how we navigated those challenges and the pivots. And so thinking about my experience over the last 7 months or so, I think professionally, I really learned a lot about managing risk and being comfortable with that, to organize our company to address our mission, fulfill our mission in new ways. So it's really about learning how to pivot. The second thing is really about moving fast, that we always want to do in innovation, but pausing at the right point to put the structure around. I think Mike DiPiano said something earlier about, the vision and the execution, right? So we can talk about the innovation, but at some point you've got to stop and execute. And so finding that balance, it was challenging to do that during the pandemic when people's lives were at stake, but it was a good lesson learned. And I think personally, I really learned the power of disconnecting and learning new things, listening to podcasts about industries that I've never really paid attention to, or just reading different things. I found that taking a step back and having that time, I got a lot of creative ideas that way. So that's definitely something I've acquired through the pandemic that I want to continue into the future.
So our honorees have had to answer this question. I have had to answer this question. And so we can't leave without you answering this question, Tiffany. What is your superpower?
So the empathy point that you and Aurora mentioned really resonated with me. And I would never really use that as a superpower to describe myself. But the way that you described it resonated with me. And so I think about myself as a dot connector. And so what I love to do, and where I felt my superpower has been really over the last 10, 15 years, I love meeting new people from all different backgrounds, all over the world. And as I'm listening to entrepreneurs and innovators and people work through problems out loud, I automatically start to think of other people who I've met who have had similar challenges or who can help in some way, shape, or form, and make those connections. And it just happens naturally. I can't really put my finger on it. I've tried to codify it in some way, shape, or form, but I'm just kind of rolling with it now. But I really, really enjoy it.
Well, in our last 30 seconds or so, what's your call to action for our audience?
So I think, listening to the awardees, really, your calls to action really resonated with me. And so kind of giving this some thought, I've been inspired what I've learned so far with the engagement of the community in Philadelphia. So really my call to action is to stay engaged and lean into this. We're gonna look at this thing as a global hub for technology innovation and healthcare and life sciences. And I need all of you to lean in and work with me as we kind of build that next chapter. Think outside the box and be prepared to invest time and resources as we build the next chapter of the Science Center.
Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for taking some time to join us. We are all eagerly awaiting your arrival here in Philadelphia. And we wish you the very best in your new position.
Thanks so much.
Well, I want to thank not only Tiffany, but I want to thank all of you who have joined us in person, and of course, all of you who are joining us from across the region and beyond. We certainly hope that the conversations that you've heard tonight have been a source of inspiration and motivation going forward. I want to congratulate, of course, our honorees, and one final thank you to our presenting sponsor, CSL Behring, and to our award sponsors, of course, New Spring, PFM, and Tri-State Capital, and Wexford Science and Technology, and Ventas, in addition, of course, to all of our gold and silver sponsors as well. So that is going to do it for Nucleus 2020. I want to have Saul come around and just wrap us up. Is Saul here to close us out?
Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. And thanks everyone who joined us virtually. And we're thrilled to put on Nucleus 2020. Thank you so much, Tracey, for serving as our MC for the event. Thanks everyone again. We'll see you next year. Good night.